and welcome from my side as well. For the next 20 minutes, we'll explore how Europe can build technological sovereignty and defense resilience with AI. Peter, not long ago, employees at big tech companies went out on the streets to protest against their employers working with the defense sector. If those companies cooperated with defense ministries at all, it was quietly, often behind closed doors. And today you're here as a representative of AMD speaking openly about defense and AI. How do you see the role of traditional tech companies in today's defense and security ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, the obvious answer is that it's become sort of an everyday task of tech companies to ensure the, say, strategic resilience and eventually defense capabilities of countries across the world. So, I mean, you could refer to employees protesting, say, 10 years back, 15 years back, and I think that has evolved over time, and it's obvious, and especially from a European perspective, during the past few years, it's for many become sort of very mission-driven to actually contribute to build defense capability in Europe. So I certainly believe that it's shifted, and I certainly believe that tech companies play a key role, and of course, eventually AI as well.
Mm-hmm. Your own company, Silo AI, was one of the very few in Europe able to build large AI models, but you sold it to the US company, AMD. Relations with the United States are complicated right now, and the big question is, how much can we rely on our NATO partner and its technology? It's a serious concern. What happens if our fighter jets can't take off because the software depends on decisions made in Washington? How can Europe or European companies work with US companies such as AMD and still make sure their access to technology isn't affected by unpredictable political decisions?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very broad question because, I mean, well, AMD is of course one player, but there are many sort of individual players in eventually supplying key technologies that are crucial for every nation's sovereignty. And they play a very different role. I mean, AMD is delivering chips, and you also referred to us, for instance, building large language models, and then eventually sort of what plays in is also software platforms and so forth. So these all contribute to sort of our, say, defense capabilities and sovereignty, but in so different ways. And I think, you know, when I think about where we want to be as Europe, I mean, Silo hasn't really changed. I usually say that it's the next chapter of the same journey. We have always been a strategic R&D partner to industry-leading AI initiatives, and a large number of those have been in Europe. They continue to be in Europe. Of course, today we work on top of AMD compute platforms, so that obviously sort of has an impact, but still we're doing the same thing that we've always done.
But you could be affected by political decisions from Washington.
We could, but that's still, I think, it's still the most important element is to understand what is sovereignty and where do we as Europe really want to stand. And I think the most important element is that Europe succeeds in building these tech platforms and building these products where, I mean, to me, AI is just an ingredient of them. AI is a feature of a product. And the important element for Europe is that Europe has the tech platforms, Europe has the products, be it for defense industry, be it for automotive, be it for life sciences, and so forth. And then eventually, you know, there could be a partner like Silo, there could be a partner like Mistral, there could be a partner in the US, and they play a key role in ensuring that these build competitive edge. But I think the bigger risk for Europe today is that Europe does not succeed in building these tech platforms or industrial platforms, and hence not taking a lead in specific industries.
Talking about risks, you've often said AI itself is not a product. Still, many people fear AI. Some even say the risk is as big as with nuclear weapons. Make it concrete for us. What might weapons or defense systems built on the latest progress in generative AI actually look like?
Yeah, I wouldn't actually necessarily connect these two things. I mean, yes, I've said that the current technology we have, which, I mean, I come with an academic background, the way I look at transformer architectures or the current Gen AI models that we use, LLMs, they're token predictors, they're sequence models just predicting the next token or next word or next pixel or whatever. And that's very far from taking us to super intelligence or however you would define AGI. Definitions, of course, matter. So I'm a believer in AI continuing to create value, but this will not take us to full autonomy, humanoid robots or whatever we want to call it, that mimics sort of super intelligence level intelligence. Now, you know, then eventually that part is different to how will Gen AI play a role in defense.
Yeah, but would you say that super intelligence in itself would be kind of a weapon? Yeah. I mean, intelligence is can be kind of a weapon, and I've oftentimes said that the fact that we first time in human history have technology that fulfills the Turing test, which means that you as a human being cannot distinguish a machine from a human being, implies that you can probably do bad things with this technology. It doesn't have to be super intelligent for, you know, a bad person to do bad things, and that, like, it applies to a hammer. So, you know, I think eventually where I was getting at was that Gen AI plays a key role in defense. And of course there are these concerns related to sort of, you know, what are the bad things you do. There are also the good things you can do with it, right? In the same way as every enterprise should adopt Gen AI, it should be adopted in defense. In the same way as, you know, autonomous vehicles are becoming better and better, then you're building more autonomy into defense and offense solutions. And in the same way you're, say, building voice control solutions with Gen AI to, for instance, drone swarming and so forth. So, I mean, it is being an embedded part of defense as well. Mm-hmm. When we think about defending NATO's eastern flank, Europe faces limits, so we don't have enough weapon systems or personnel to protect the entire border. AI could be a real opportunity here. Do we need to rethink defense from strategy and tactics to procurement with AI at the core, and how do we do that?
That's again a very broad question. So let me try.
You can make it very concrete.
Let me try to sort of narrow down in a sense, and maybe take a few steps back. So what? And I'm sort of saying all of this without actually coming with a defense background. So it might be a naive perspective to this, but I mean, what's happened during the past, say, 10, 20 years. Is that the sort of world has shown that there's a better way to procure some of this technology. There's a better way to develop some of this technology, and that's called product development and R&D, where you eventually build competitive products that you offer to many, rather than procuring through contract R&D type of settings, individual solutions or individual products. And I think that's the transformation that happened, especially during the past 10 plus years in the US, with a few leading companies paving the way. And I think that's actually been good for the industry as a whole. Now, I think the core question in sort of whether defense should think about technology differently is that while that gives us good technology, it doesn't really give us the agility and speed that I believe you need when you build technology for the requirements on the battlefield. And when I say that, you cannot have development cycles that are in years, because basically the battlefield changes in days or weeks. And hence, I think the next sort of evolution of this sort of change is that we, as Europe and as individual defense forces, understand that we need to stand on open stack, open architecture, modular systems that can be adapted in an agile fashion, which means that you basically need to also have your own R&D capabilities and be able to operate, one could say then, in the same way as Ukraine is operating when they are providing solutions that are actually tackling the problems on the battlefield.
Coming from operation systems to models, many people think of Gen AI mainly as large language models, but literally under the radar there are other modalities, like large vision models, for example, that process and generate images. From your view, what role could these play in the defense sector in the future?
Yeah, I think they play an important role, and that's sort of how I look at sort of the AI opportunity more broadly. So frontier models, these general purpose assistants and chatbots, create a lot of value. They will continue to create even more value. There's a tremendous opportunity. But what I believe is even more important to understand is that there's sort of these other modalities that are basically giving us these sort of upcoming waves that partly are happening already. The Nobel Prize last year was given to AI in life sciences, protein folding. You can see the life science industry as a whole transforming, and that's around a new modality. In the same way, the same is happening in automotive. You have key self-driving initiatives that are basically the same neural network architecture as ChatGPT, so transformers, being used by, say, Waymo, by Tesla, by Wave, and so forth. And the same is happening in, say, gaming, in weather models, in material sciences, and so forth. So I certainly believe that this will basically reshape and transform industries, and especially those companies that are willing to invest and basically do bold bets in building these foundation models. And now if we go back to defense, then in the same way, we need autonomy, we need bold bets. I mean, you could say that Europe has one bold bet in Helsinki, building autonomy, for instance.
Berlin-based or Munich-based defense company.
Yeah. And likewise, you know, there should be many others doing bold bets in these new modalities, in these other modalities. And an example to this, where, you know, this is hypothetical, but the way I look at sort of Earth as a modality, let's take the satellite companies of Europe, like IZEI, which is based in Helsinki. They have satellites that are sending quasi-real-time data of the modality Earth. You could view that as a modality that for which you build a foundation model, for which you eventually can build agents that are capable of doing tasks on the modality Earth that might be relevant for not only, of course, defense, also a number of other industries.
Right. Innovations of that kind all start with research, and Europe loves to highlight its research excellence, but to be honest, it rarely turns into products. What do you think? How can we improve the transfer from research to production in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, we've been asking this question for the past many years. It's not a
Did you find the solution finally?
No, and you know, then the headlines have been Europe risks becoming a museum and this and that, and I do think it's a real risk. I mean, I think it was last weekend we had updated results on the top 25 companies in the world. I don't remember exactly how many years back, but say 20 years back, we had 8 companies on that list. Today, we have 0 companies on that list. If we look at how many plus 100 billion companies we've built during the past 50 years, 0, said the Draghi report last year. Today, it's 1, it's Spotify. All US-based plus 1 trillion companies have been created during the past 5 decades. So there clearly is a problem. Now, I think my key take on that is, you know, we have the talent, we have the compute, we have the capital, because I believe capital is global, and so forth. There are certainly things that need to be fixed, but the most important element is the single market. I don't think we have a market where it's easy for startups and scale-ups to scale. And that's what you eventually need to do when you get sort of significant capital. And you know, there are many companies that are moving away, and there are other companies that are struggling. So eventually, you know, that's something that's easier said than done. The commissioner referred to the 28th regime. I think the 28th regime is exactly the thing that needs to change. But most importantly, what we can do today is to build ecosystems. And that's what Silicon Valley has been doing for the past many decades. It doesn't happen in a year or two. And I've oftentimes said that Paris is a good example of a strong academic cluster that became eventually a center for AI in Europe. So OpenAI and Meta and Google DeepMind and so forth set up their R&D centers there. And now during the past years, we've had leading companies. Well, we had Arthur from Mistral here yesterday. And you have many others like Qtai, Poolside, H Company, and so forth that have raised in the billions of capital. So I think we need to ensure that we're basically feeding those ecosystems, and it will take time. And then maybe as just a last thing to this is that, or two things. One is there's a tremendous opportunity in software today. So the software industry is being reshapen. Mm-hmm. And it's being reshaped because it's so easy to create new software products, embed AI into them by tapping into the existing frontier models and provide this 10x experience to legal, to healthcare, to whatever industry. And that's where you can see the world's fastest growing companies today. But we also have an existing industry, and I referred earlier to life sciences, to automotive, to gaming. Those are actually three industries in which Europe has some of the world's biggest companies, some of the world's leading companies, and they're being transformed. And then the question is big tech doing the bold investments in that space, or is it actually the industrial platforms in Europe?
Mm-hmm. You're here to represent AMD, but I have to ask you about your new project, Nest AI. You're the chairman of a new lab working on physical AI, which is AI combined with robotics and autonomous systems, also for defense. So what exactly is it about, and what are you planning?
Yeah. And I'm actually not the chairman of that specifically, but I am the chairman of Postscriptum, and it sits under my family office. It's an initiative that was launched a few weeks back from Stealth, but basically it's part of many activities that we are doing in the AI ecosystem, and where we have been trying to drive the AI ecosystem, especially in the Nordics, one could say here, new Nordics. So, you know, as part of that, as you are aware of, through the foundation that also sits in that structure, we've donated professorships in Finland to attract the Ellis Institute, a leading AI research institute. We've been doing investments into early stage AI companies, such as, for instance, Lovable, that's one of the fastest growing companies in the region, and many others. And then as a third activity, we've also been building what, as we call it, next generation AI technology. So yes, it's focusing on physical AI, robotics, and unmanned vehicles. And it's, I mean, defense is one dimension to that. It's a multi-domain AI lab that focuses on physical AI, which I believe is going to be extremely important going forward. But specifically from a defense perspective, in line with what I said earlier, I truly believe it is important for European defense forces to build own R&D capabilities, to do so on top of OpenStack, open architecture, build own capability that allows to operate in an agile development fashion in the same way as Ukraine is doing. And if anything, then this is one of the initiatives that Nest AI sort of wants to support with.
We have a few seconds left, so my last question. Let's say you're building the only defense company for the AI age, and you can only pick one, the engineers from Airbus or from Mistral. Who would you choose?
I think Arthur probably already left, and I know Airbus is here. So I'll actually say Airbus for the reason, Arthur is a good friend, and they're doing great technology. But I'll say Airbus for the reason that Airbus sits on a platform that is tremendously valuable for them and for Europe. And I believe our industrial giants in Europe need to succeed in building AI into their platforms and take the lead in their industries.
Okay, our time is up. Thank you for the conversation, and thank you all for listening.
Very good, thank you.